the most isolated inhabited island on Earth, sits in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It is 1,200 miles from the nearest scrap of land in any direction. When Polynesian explorers found it around 1200 AD, it was a forested paradise. Giant palm trees covered the hills and seabirds nested on every cliff and rocky outcrop. The first settlers called the island Rapa Nui, and for centuries they thrived there. Then they began carving faces out of the volcanic rock and dragging them to the coast. Nearly 900 stone giants still stand on the island today, some over 30 feet tall. The heaviest Moai weighs 86 tons, more than a fully loaded space shuttle. Every statue was carved with stone tools from the compressed ash of a single volcanic crater. The quarry at Rano still holds nearly 400 statues in various stages of completion. Some are still attached to the bedrock, mid-carving, as if the sculptors simply walked away. You can see the chisel marks on their cheeks and the brows still waiting to be freed. The moai were not just art, they were ancestors made manifest in stone. Each statue represented a specific deceased chief or elder watching over the village. They were placed on stone platforms called ahu, facing inland toward the people they protected. The statues did not face the sea, they faced the island, guarding their descendants from within. The Rapa Nui carved larger and larger moai over the centuries in an escalating competition. Clans tried to outdo each other with statues that were taller, heavier, and more elaborate. Red stone top knots called pukao were added, each weighing up to 12 tons. These cylindrical red hats came from a separate quarries 7 miles across the island. Moving a single moai in its upright position across that distance defies modern imagination. The statues were walked upright, using ropes and coordinated teams pulling from 3 directions. The moai rocked side to side as it moved, a stone giant lumbering toward the shore. The rope burns on the statues prove they were transported standing, exactly as oral tradition says. But every moai moved required something the island was running out of at terrifying speed. Rope required fiber from palm trees that were being cut down faster than they could regrow. Rollers and sleds required timber from the same disappearing forest that blanketed the slopes. The giant palms of Rapa Nui were cousins of the Chilean wine palm, slow-growing and irreplaceable. Pollen samples from lake beds show the forest collapsed completely within a few centuries. Every tree on Easter Island was cut down by humans or eaten by the rats they brought. Without trees, the Rapa Nui could no longer build canoes to fish in the deep ocean. Their protein source shifted to whatever they could catch from the shore or raise on land. The seabird colonies vanished because there was no forest left for them to nest in. Bird bones disappear from the archaeological record in exact lockstep with the tree pollen. The islanders turned to the largest remaining protein source on the island. Each other archaeological evidence of cannibalism appears in the late period of Rapa Nui history. At the same time, the statue cult that had driven the deforestation reached its breaking point. The moai were no longer being raised. They were being pulled down. Clans began toppling the statues of their rivals, smashing the faces into the ground. The coral eyes that had given the statues their sight were pried out and shattered. Hundreds of moai lie face down today, exactly where they were overthrown centuries ago. The platforms of the ahu became burial sites instead of ceremonial centers. The Rapa Nui tore down the ancestors they had once carved with such devotion. When Europeans arrived in 1722, the island was nearly treeless. The Dutch explorer Jacob Roggeveen found a traumatized society living in caves and reed huts. The islanders had no seaworthy canoes and could barely feed themselves from the degraded land. They could not explain how the statues were moved, because they no longer had the means. The civilization that had carved 800 giants from living rock had collapsed completely. But the story of Easter Island is more complex than the simple parable often told. The Rapa Nui did not simply destroy their environment and expire in ignorance. They adapted their agriculture with rock gardens that trapped moisture and protected crops from wind. They survived centuries after the last tree fell, rebuilding their society around new resources. The Birdman cult replaced the Moai cult, with a race to retrieve the first egg of the season. Competitors swam through shark-filled waters to a rocky islet and waited for the turn to lay. The winner became spiritual leader for the year, a new system born from the collapse. The Rapa Nui were not victims of one mistake, but of a complex cascade of pressures. European diseases, slave raids, and the rats they unknowingly introduced all played devastating roles. In 1862, Peruvian slave ships captured half the remaining population in a single raid. A few years later, only 111 Rapa Nui were left alive on the island. Today, the Rapa Nui people are rebuilding their culture and language from the edge of extinction. The Moai stand along the coast, their backs to the sea and faces toward the island. They are the most eloquent warning ever carved in stone about the limits of the world. An island is a world in miniature, and Easter Island is a miniature of our own.